Welcome to the Daily Cannon podcast. Hello again, listeners. If you're out there, with the football season being over, welcome to another Daily Cannon Weekly podcast. I'm Matthew, as per usual, and this is Helen, who is also surprisingly regular.
Hello.
That sounded a bit like as a conversation about Bran, so we'll move swiftly on. How are things in your world?
Good. I mean, it's a bit of a bizarre feeling to have my weekends back with nothing to do, but perhaps after the season we've had, that's not necessarily a bad thing for a bit.
Yes, and I suppose international fixtures do largely count as having nothing to do, at least until the tournament starts. We both managed to catch a bit of England versus Australia, which was slightly less interesting than it normally be for us due to the lack of Arsenal players in the England team at the moment. So rather than sort of desperately praying certain people wouldn't get injured, I suppose we could be gently disinterested in a broader sense.
Well, to be fair, I think the highlight of the game, as per usual for me, was actually more related to Spurs. I'm so thoroughly uninvested in the results of England at the moment that Eric Dyer's own goal was a particular highlight.
Yeah, I mean, that was an inspired substitution, wasn't it?
Inspired substitution and an inspired finish, you'd have to say.
Although I have to admit, I did take quite a lot of pleasure from Marcus Rashford's mum. Every time the camera panned to her showing the replay of the goal, or when he came off and her just looking like the most pleased person in the world, which I think is always a useful thing to be reminded of with young footballers, the sort of the actual human element rather than the inter-club loathing. And you know, he may have scored against us, but he hasn't cheated against us yet, so we can't yet give him the full Man United hatred.
I'll keep your opinion on that one.
This may seem like an odd question, all things considered, but are you going to take any interest in the tournament going ahead, whether it be from a Arsenal or otherwise perspective?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, once a major tournament gets underway, then you're always a little bit invested as a patriotic individual. But that said, my interest as soon as England go out will be extremely limited to effectively Arsenal players coming back injury-free and ideally in the kind of form that sees them score lots of goals but lose like 5-4 and things like that.
We haven't got that many attacking players apart from Giroud at the tournament, do we? And we've got Özil counts as an attacking player, I guess. But so we want Big Ollie to score a ton of goals to fulfil Sylvan's prediction as him being top scorer. That was your prediction as well, wasn't it?
Or, I don't think so.
You may have been joking, of course. But yeah, okay, well, I tried briefly to pretend we give a toss about the Euros, but I can't really. It's
just boring, isn't it?
The World Cup's always more exciting because the World Cup's got more players you don't know who they are. So you've always got some like...
transfer targets.
Yeah, well, you've always got some kind of like North Korean or someone from the United Arab Emirates who's never going to be linked to Arsenal. You've never seen YouTube compilations of him, so you're just sort of enjoying their randomness. Like that bloke Shalabala at the South Africa World Cup, who in the opening game spanked one from about 40 yards. And obviously, you know, he'd been around long enough that everyone knew he was never going to go play for a big team, so it's kind of quite nice. I enjoy that. Or when, you know, South Korea knock out Italy and Spain and everyone cries foul. But yeah, I find it quite hard to get excited in anticipation. But we'll see. Perhaps they'll drag us along.
I think the problem is that there's not really any chance of upset. You know, we look at what's happened in the Premier League this year, and everyone's just I call them neutrals, but anyone who doesn't support one of the teams who are realistically in with a shout of winning the title was so happy to see Leicester going through the season like they did. And I think the same is true of a World Cup. You know, you feel like there's a possibility for an underdog, a bit like the year that we failed to win a group game, and yeah.
Or when Greece won the Euros, playing turgid football, but at least it's funny.
But now that they've changed the format of the Euros, so 3 teams basically progress from each group, it's just ridiculous. You know, 16 out of 24 teams qualify or something.
Yeah.
It really, you have to be really bad to get knocked out in the group stage.
Something to aim for, England.
Well, in our office sweepstake, we have 3 prizes. So if you come first, you win a ton of money. If you come second, you get your money, like your stake, back. And if your team does the worst of anyone in the entire tournament, then you get bigger prize than I. So when you're dipping your hand in, you don't quite know what team you're hoping to pull out, to be honest.
Has it taken place already, or are you preparing to warm the balls?
No, so it has. And when it got to me, I was the 24th person to dip my hand in the bag, so to speak. So I didn't know what was left, but I also knew that everyone else, I had no choice. There was no feeling of, I've got some options here. Whatever comes out is what it will be. And the person before me, the lady doing the draw said, that Germany's still in there. I was like, oh, come on. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the penultimate person pulled out Germany. And I was like, okay, so tell me then, what's left? She's like, I honestly don't know. I haven't got the foggiest. And I was like, oh, God, it's going to be someone middle of the road, not so bad enough that you win with a shout of the crap prize, but clearly not good enough to be with a shout of big money either.
Who did you get, Bosnia or something?
No, I was quite impressed. I don't anticipate making any money out of it, but I drew Belgium.
Okay, yeah, at least that'll be vaguely entertaining.
Exactly, dark horse and all that. So, yeah. And of course, it gave me added interest in the game earlier this weekend, when effectively it was Granit Xhaka versus my sweepstake team. Yes,
or Granit Xhaka versus one or two transfer targets we may be vaguely wistfully looking in the direction of.
Indeed. It's difficult to see that any of those Belgian players would be highly likely targets, I think.
Yeah, and unless the Wenger wallet is really, really coming out to play in a way that hasn't been precedented, but it seems fairly unlikely.
Yeah, well, they'd also have to be from teams that would be prepared to sell to us. And
so basically you're talking Lukaku or someone a bit crap.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, we had this chat the other day, didn't we? Would you rather pay 45 million for Morata, or would you rather stump up an extra 15 million for Lukaku? And I said, well, I'd rather take Morata because at least you've got the illusion that he's going to be potentially really good and value for money. But with Lukaku, if you pay 60 million for him, that you're just pissing your money down the drain. Well, a good player, not a great player. And not worth 60 million quid. Yeah,
I mean, the thing about Lukaku is it all depends on what you want. I mean, he's not the most subtle striker, and his link-up play is a bit erratic, but he would...
Erratic's the word, though, isn't it? His consistency is just not there in any aspect of his game. He can have games where he's completely unplayable, and then he can have games when he's useless, and we've already got one big striker like that. We don't need another.
Well, the difference is Lukaku's only 22, so theoretically his ceiling is higher.
He's still only 22. It feels like he should be older.
I know. It's because we forget that he's actually became Anderlecht's first choice centre-forward at 16.
Mind you, this does bring me quite nicely onto something that's been winding me up quite a lot recently. And I'm sure you'll know what the topic is there. It's not a major conversation point, and I don't.
Is this the decade of criticism, for chance?
It is the decade of criticism, and I don't want to get into the realms of defending whether or not Theo Walcott's record for us is good, bad, indifferent, or otherwise. I just find it really funny that there's this huge narrative around 10 years at Arsenal when he joined at 16. So by definition, you wouldn't really expect him to do that much for at least the first 5 years at the club. And people are going, oh, well, if Thierry Henry had been at the club for 10 years, imagine how many goals he'd have scored. Yeah, but he didn't join when he was 16.
Well, also, Thierry Henry was one of the best strikers in the world. So it's a bit of an unfair comparison.
Well, if not the best striker in the world, certainly of his generation.
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely top three, depending on where you think the time period starts and ends. But
number one, unquestionably.
Well, he just sort of overlapped.
He could do things with the football that I've barely seen before or since. So.
Yeah, but he did overlap with Brazilian Ronaldo and Messi, so both quite good,
better than Messi anyway. I don't know what you're chatting about.
The Walcott narrative is that thing where, because he is such a frustrating player, and there's the contract thing, and there's the fact that this year's been a bit shit, that there's been so many different people writing from different angles, basically wanting to decry him as useless. But of course, the fact is it even when he's a bit shit, he's not useless. He's just not.
Oh, well, he kind of is.
Oh, he can be useless.
I'm very defensive of him, but he kind of is.
But having said that, he still was, our third top goal scorer this season?
I think it's easy to forget that he played quite well for the first couple of months of the year before he got injured.
But I think it's also the fact that he has missed a couple of years of injury out of the last 3, and just because he's never going to be the player that we all hoped he would be when he was the bright shiny toy at 16, that doesn't mean that he can't be useful to us, which is essentially what the real question and answer is. People seem to be just sort of willing to kind of flog him for 15 million. It's like, well, that's just stupid, because ultimately
to me,
you're not going to get someone who can do this, who can offer as much for that kind of money.
It's a bit like taking someone like Robert Pires, who scored roughly, I think, 2 goals in every 3 games that he played for us, but then moaning about how in his first year he only scored like 4 goals in 30 appearances or something. When you first start out, clearly your record isn't going to be as good as when you hit your peak. And I think really what we should be looking at is the fact that having hit his peak this season, Theo didn't perform. I ain't got an issue having a conversation about that. It's just a little bugbear of mine when people are, joined at 16, never delivered on his promise, blah, 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 blah.
Although there is a thing which I found interesting. I've stumbled across one of these articles going, he's crap, 10 years, flog him. But it did link back to the footage of him as a 16-year-old for Southampton, which I suppose cements exactly why people feel so disappointed, because, yes, his overall game has improved, but in terms of key elements of his game, certain things were there even at 16, which maybe not Premier League level, but the goals he was scoring as a 16-year-old for Southampton are as good as the goals he scores 10 years later.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things he's done over that 10-year period. He's improved how he's able to collect the ball, running at speed. He's improved his finishing, and he has improved his ability to contribute to the more all-round element of the game. And I guess also it's easy watching highlights reel to think, oh yeah, he was already that player, but he has increased and improved the consistency with which he's able to deliver those performances as well. I think for me, the slightly depressing thing this year was we didn't play to suit him for the sort of second 2/3 of the season, really, and then he started to change how he played. So you could look at that as positive and say, yeah, he tried to adapt to the team around him. But the trouble is, it didn't play to his strengths, and therefore he looked like a rubbish player. It's a bit like taking someone like Santi Cazorla, and because no one's playing the ball to feet, he starts going around trying to hit the ball all the time. That was for me what I found frustrating. Is you want Theo to be making runs in behind, you want him to be running down the wing or making those diagonal in and out runs, and actually what he was doing was coming forward, asking for the ball to feet, and so often he and Bellerin were in the same sort of trap. They weren't going one out, one in. They just were in the same space as each other, and it just didn't work really. So, well, that's what I'm hoping that post summer we'll fix some of that.
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why fundamentally Bellerin and Walcott are not compatible as a right-sided connection, because Bellerin is a player who benefits primarily from having space around him, particularly if there's a slightly more solid option inside him in midfield. Whereas I think Walcott in this current Arsenal team is better as a more inside forward or a striker, given the way the team is set up as things currently stand. But I mean, who knows? So much depends on who arrives over the summer as to what his role in the squad will be. Certainly, he's got a fair amount to prove to manager and fans that the promise he showed the year and a half before he first got his serious injury, it can be replicated and potentially improved upon, which of course is what we're all waiting for. Because lest we forget, he got 20 goals that season, so clearly there we have seen a player that can be very effective. It's just that it's always a "what have you done for me lately" business, and he hasn't done a great deal on that front, not always for reasons of his own creation.
There's plenty of other players in that position as well.
Well, indeed.
Plenty of players that the general fan base would be happy to throw out this summer if the appropriate replacements could be sourced. Yeah,
I mean, I suppose that neatly segues into the Ox, really. I've heard a lot of people suggesting that he should be jettisoned, and obviously there is that sense that he's gone backwards, but I don't know what you think. I think it would be a retrograde step to get rid of him, simply because we know there is a player there, and his issue in a different way has been an inability to stay fit and really build up any rhythm.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because he has had games this season where he's looked good. He's looked like he's taken a step up in terms of his end product, his focus on what he does. But then the trouble is, he is what, 22, 23?
22,
he's still in that very young bracket where inconsistency is pretty much, barring very, very top echelon of players, inconsistency is a hallmark of who they are. For me, I think the telling person you have to look at this year is Eden Hazard, a player whose class is undeniable, but his ability to deliver it consistently for Chelsea this year has been non-existent. And for me, that's the same thing with the Ox. He's clearly got the potential to be a great player, but he's just not there yet in terms of doing it week in, week out. And I think it's much harder to do that at a big club where you are more in and out of the team as well to deliver that consistency.
Yeah, and there's also, I suppose, it touches on the broader issue which affects performance of a lot of players. If you're in and out of the team and the team is also not able to, I suppose, rely upon regular selection, either due to rotation, due to multiple competitions, or in our case, a combination of that and the never-ending litany of injuries, you end up with a situation where not only are you little uncertain perhaps on what you're doing, but also combinations with players. I mean, there's a certain amount that you can do in training, but equally, even in training, with the amount of injuries we've had, it's been hard to even have that as a constant.
I think that's true, and I think the other element to it, of course, is when the team's playing well, it's easier to play well.
Of course,
because there's less pressure on you, and for a younger player, that's really important. If the senior players are seen to be there to be carrying you through, then it is much easier to turn in those performances. But when you've got players misfiring left, right and centre, everyone's trying to do something special. And I think we touched on it last week, the Ox is the classic example of someone who just tries too hard.
And obviously, as we've spoken before, the importance of partnerships in any team. Any team you go through this season that's performed well, it's been reliant upon certain partnerships. Vardy and Mahrez and Kante and Drinkwater being obvious examples that I think everyone will be aware of. And obviously, our partnerships have been very largely disrupted, both on the flanks and in central areas. We've managed to retain certain key players fit for most of the season, but they're all players that are key as individuals rather than in specific partnerships. And I think it's very important to, when assessing performance, to recognise that pegs need to fit.
I suppose in doing so that you're alluding to Ozil in that scenario, and I agree that Ozil is someone who obviously can perform an individual role for the team, but equally, if he has consistent partners who he works with, imagine what he could do with that. Naturally,
but his role is just one which is, I suppose,
he partners with everyone.
Yeah, his role is less about a specific partnership that's limited to one or two people. But obviously, anyone's affected by disruption around them, particularly with our front line, for instance, in our central midfield, where our options this year have been so widely contrasting. Walcott and Giroud, very different options. Cazorla and Coquelin versus Ramsey and Flamini, very different options. And so the way the whole team plays is thus different. So even someone like Ozil, or even an individualist like Sanchez, is affected by that.
I wonder if one of our biggest problems has been that we don't have a first choice 11. If you look at Leicester, I don't follow Leicester. I could still name you their starting 11, which basically every single Leicester fan would agree is their first choice starting 11, without even thinking about it. And to be honest, I could probably, so kill me, but I could probably do the same for Spurs.
Indeed, yeah.
Two teams who effectively outperformed where you'd expect them to be this season.
Hence the reason why when Spurs got a couple of players missing towards the end of the season, the wheels came off, yeah. Yeah.
As we so happily sang about, but not till they were at least 3-1 down on the final. No, to be fair, I think, what was our penultimate home game this season? Was it Norwich? Someone like that.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, we were definitely singing I Win the Wheels in the penultimate home game as well, because I was thinking, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this. Just a little bit. I'm one of those people who prefers to wait until there's at least a significant chance of mishap happening before I open myself to potential ridicule. It was Norwich.
So I'm just very amused by the fact you checked that surreptitiously. Good work.
I told you, my memory's as leaky as a sieve which has had shotgun bullets put through it. So,
as you're saying, with Arsenal, the question of the what is the first 11, how much of that is down to a lot of players of similar quality that fulfil similar roles, or how much of it is just down to the fact that they're all bloody injured every year?
No, but I think in midfield, it's just that we have so many different players, and I'm talking now as well.
Yeah, sure.
Not necessarily looking at the season gone by, but I haven't got the first idea who's going to be our first choice starting midfield come August. I mean, if you pushed me on it, I'd say that Xhaka's got to be in it because we paid 35 million for him or whatever, and we all know what Wenger's like with big money signings. You cannot have a rest ever again. But beyond that, I don't even know if he's going to play alongside Coquelin, or whether we play a playmaker alongside him, or even whether we go with someone box to box. You know, there's so many permutations now. It's exciting in one way, but I think equally, if we continue with this great big amorphous blob of midfielders, you don't get those partnerships as you talked about.
Yeah, there's only so much horses for courses you can go in a team, and you have to make sure that that's not being played out too widely across the team.
But you can also move people across, right? So if you play Ramsey in the middle regularly, for example, then if you then move him out to right wing for a particular game, that's far less disruptive than if you're moving lots of different people in and out of the team. Because at least he has an understanding of where he fits into the rest of the team. You know, he knows how the players around him will play, even if he himself will be playing slightly differently.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to geek out now. Actually,
good company, Matthew.
No, I actually really interrogated exactly what you're talking about by starting a new game of Football Manager to celebrate the end of the season, downloading all the latest updates, whatever. So Xhaka starts at Arsenal. Yeah, well, I'm an unemployed actor.
Employment, obviously.
yeah, exactly. But between jobs, darling, between jobs. And you know, I was trying to exactly balance that because, as you say, there is a plethora of central midfield options and perhaps not necessarily the same strength and depth elsewhere in the squad. So I ended up going for a sort of central three-man midfield with Ramsey pushed slightly further right, with Xhaka and Wilshere rotating with Cazorla, and then it meant that it did, however, mean that Elneny and Coquelin did start to get pissed off. So.
That's what I wonder. I couldn't help thinking when we signed Xhaka what it means for Elneny, because it felt like he was a signing that was bought not in sort of desperation or, you know, as an emergency. It was clearly one that we thought out, but it was still one that felt like we made it because we had some injuries rather than because we desperately wanted him, if that makes sense.
Well, I know what you mean in that his profile and you know, although he performed admirably, his profile and quality level were not an obvious upgrade to what was pre-existent. It did seem like a case of adding another competent body that had some qualities that we lacked, and I very much saw him as a slightly smarter Elneny replacement in terms of his role in the squad.
Oh, see, yeah. I suppose that's the closest person I would pin him to, because I was just thinking, you know, you've got Cazorla and Wilshere, who can play that deep line playmaker, or they can play further forward. You've got Coquelin, and now I guess you've got Xhaka, who play in that more defensive role, albeit that Xhaka has a little bit more culture about his passing and his game starting. But the one player we don't really have a like-for-like replacement for, particularly, you know, if we thought that Flamini was this person anyway, is Aaron Ramsey. That role to get back and forth. But that for me is where I see Elneny being. Yeah, that's where his qualities are for me. And again, he's still young.
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree with you with that, and I think Elneny's role is partly for his flexibility. I mean, he's someone that, as we've seen, he's not going to beat three men and whip crosses in out wide on a regular basis, but he's comfortable finding himself in that position. In that he's comfortable finding himself deeper. I mean, he's an extremely mobile water carrier with a good shot, essentially, which means he's not going to change a game in any particular position, but you can slot him into two or three different roles and not be worried, because you know he's got the mobility and responsibility to try and, you know, fit into that as best he can without leaving the team too exposed.
There's two things for me. I think one is he's sort of like he's like the oil that keeps everything else functioning. On his own, he doesn't do anything particularly special, but he just links everything up.
Yeah.
And I think the second angle for me is he is clearly intelligent and astute enough that because we play this sort of fluid formation where, yeah, you're the defensive midfielder, but actually if you fancy going for a wander, we're not going to lose our sleep over it. And for me, that's where his quality comes, because he seems to be aware of where everyone is going or moving and drop back to fill those spaces, which is something perhaps we've lacked for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I suppose, compare him to Flamini with more awareness is not just a defensive awareness, but an awareness about he's always in position to receive the pass, which is one of his great strengths. You know, he's very good at just getting 5 yards of space, not necessarily anywhere particularly dangerous, but he knows basically how to put himself in a position where the ball's going to stay in.
He's always
in
an option. He's never hiding.
Yeah. There's going to be quite a shootout between our midfielders this summer, but then given that the entirety of last season was characterised by a paucity of options in central midfield due to injuries and other things, perhaps it'd be a nice change for once.
I was going to say, it's one of those things that, you know, at the start of the season, if everyone is fit, then yeah, it's a problem, but it's not going to be a problem forever.
Not with Arsenal,
injuries,
no.
You know, it is what it is. I suppose I was just thinking it from the perspective that I wouldn't anticipate seeing Elneny and Xhaka start together all that often.
No, I mean, that's an option for perhaps, you know, teams that you think are better than you or already tough away games.
Yeah, but I think in those circumstances you might be tempted to play Coquelin and Xhaka. For me,
perhaps, yeah.
You know, as I say, Elneny's big strength is plugging the gaps where other people are. You know, particularly when the likes of Coquelin go forwards. But with Xhaka in the team, as I'm assuming he will be, he doesn't go forward. You know, from what I've seen anyway, it remains to be seen whether Mr. Wenger manages to coach that out of him. If he stays true to what he's done so far, he won't really be venturing forward, no matter how much we're dominating teams. He'll stay that bit deeper and spread play. But by definition, then that eliminates the need for someone like Elneny to be in the team to then back and fill those spaces, because there won't be any spaces to fill.
Well, one of the reasons why I likened Xhaka to Petit when I was talking about him before was not just nice left foot, like spraying long passes.
Yeah,
exactly. But it's because although his primary instinct is to stay in a more defensive role, he is capable of playing further forward when the situation demands it. And is very comfortable with, you know, making those late runs if he need to. I mean, after all, he broke into the Swiss team almost as a sort of a slightly deeper number 10.
True.
And his role at Mönchengladbach has been partly defined by the changing of personnel around him. I mean, I still think, as you say, that deeper role will be primarily where we'll see him, but I think he does have the flexibility to play further upfield.
But that makes it more interesting, doesn't it? Because that means the possibility for a Coquelin Xhaka midfield doesn't necessarily have to be limited to really defensive games as well. Because if he's got the potential to play higher up, then maybe it gives you a bit more consistency in the middle of the park. Because if you need a goal, he can push forward, and if you need to just slow the game down, take a bit of the sting out of it, or just defend a 1-0 lead, then you've equally got a player in there who could sit alongside Coquelin.
Or the Swiss Army knife.
The more excited I'm getting.
Good. I mean, obviously, so much of how our midfield lines up is going to be dictated by what's happening ahead of them. And obviously that so much of that will be influenced by whether the manager is able to recruit another striker, because obviously Welbeck we know we're not going to see for a long time, and Walcott and Giroud are very fundamentally different options in almost every way. So, normally whichever of them you pick certainly dictates a certain amount from what you want from your midfield and what the best midfield lineup is. But then who else comes in puts the cat amongst the pigeons as far as that's concerned. And obviously, ideally, we want someone who can do a bit like what Welbeck was doing for us, but with a more consistent goal threat, which is be that splitting the difference between the two, someone who can actually play a more physical role, but someone with the pace to get in behind. And of course, if that happens, then that gives our midfield a lot more flexibility. But rather than playing the pin the tail on the striker game, I think it's probably best if we don't sort of worry about that too much at this juncture.
That's exactly what the Euros is for, isn't it? Scouting out potential replacements.
Exactly. Is Morata any bloody good after all? Yeah. Can Lukaku improve his first touch? Yeah. How much will it cost to get Griezmann? No, too much. Okay, move on. although his penalty miss.
But anyway, is he?
Well.
Yeah.
His penalty miss was quite poor against Real Madrid. It's a bit psyched out by the goalkeeper, but they were desperately unlucky, Atletico.
Did you see the cynical hack of Sergio Ramos?
That was a quality professional foul, wasn't it?
It would have been 3-on-1, and you just think this is disgusting. Like, that should not be a yellow card. You know,
it's a sort of orange, isn't it?
Is it worse to make a genuine attempt at a challenge on someone in the very corner of the penalty area by the byline, and them, go over under the slightest contact? Or is it worse to chop someone down through on goal? Something wrong with, and people are saying, it's within the laws of the game, blah, blah, blah. But it's cheating. It's for me, it's cheating just as badly as if you dive to win a penalty. The impact is the same. It stopped what is... In a 2-on-1, yeah, maybe not, but 3-on-1, that has got to be really, really high chances of a goal at that point. You just think, well, we've seen how 2-on-1s turn out in major Champions League games previously, haven't we? My abiding memory of that Man United semi-final was just various moves where they were able to cross the ball to an unmarked person to tap it into an empty net. Well,
I was thinking even more recently of the same gentleman running with the ball at his feet against us at the Emirates for Monaco. only none of our players had the presence of mind to take him out before he got too far.
Yes.
And of course,
painful memories.
And of course, the worst part about that at the weekend was that we ended up with Ronaldo, despite one of his worst performances of his career, getting to have his glory hunter moment of, I will take the fifth penalty, as I always take the fifth penalty, because I want to get the winning goal so I can wave my bronzed nipples at the universe.
To be fair, I mean, I know I'm a little bit biased here because bronzed nipples probably don't sort of offend me as much as they do you, but if you offered me a choice of the Ronaldo penalty and the John Terry penalty, or having neither of them, I think I'd have gone to have the penalties.
True. Yeah, I mean,
Balance of the universe, and all that, give it and it taketh away.
No, it's just, I suppose, I was very neutral before the game because I'm not a particular lover of Simeone's Atletico, despite an admiration for them. But they actually, after a first half where they kind of were a bit rabbit in the headlights, in the second half, they were dominating the play, playing all the attractive football and actually showing what they could do when their plan A doesn't work, which was a bit of an eye-opener for me. And to be honest, they were the better team. But Real managed to just crawl over to penalties, and you always fancied them on penalties, really, because they got so many brilliant players.
Okay, see, it's funny, because I kind of wanted Atletico to do well, just because, it's that age-old underdog one. But then I stopped halfway through and I thought, this is kind of like us playing Spurs in the Champions League final. And really, I shouldn't want the underdogs to win in that scenario. So
the thought of Spurs reaching the Champions League final had never really washed across my consciousness. It's a long enough shot that we'll do it again anytime soon, but it's never crossed my mind that Spurs will. I suppose you're obviously slightly closer to the possibility every day of your life, but
unfortunately,
that's what your life choices have left you with. So, as it's left me with lots of time to have no money and play playing Football Manager.
Championship Manager, now you're taking me back.
Yeah, played everyone since the first one.
It was the 99-2000 version, where you basically had Junichi Inamoto started the squad, and he was ineligible for everything.
Oh gosh, yes. Mind you, the fact that it's your first also makes me feel old, because somewhere I've still got the box for the 1992 original with fake players. Won the European Cup with Barnet, I'll have you know.
There you go. I was going to say, I'm not a fan of the more recent ones where you're forced to start at the bottom and work your way up.
I know, you don't have to at all.
Oh, it's just personal preference, is it?
Yeah, no, I'll be doing none of that, thank you very much. Season 1, Arsenal, right.
No, my brother does it. He's always like, oh yeah, look what I did with Exeter. You care what you did with Exeter. Who wants to manage Exeter?
Someone from Exeter.
He's not from Exeter, though. He's from the home counties.
The home counties. Oh, I like you did the home counties voice there as well. Very nice. Suddenly your voice went all Radio 4 then.
The home counties.
The home counties.
It's a bit like there's a town close to where I live, which is called Arlo.
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 Arlo. Yeah.
It's called Hollow.
Yes. No, I'm aware of Harlow.
Don't say.
Well, it's it's good to give somewhere a bit of character, I guess.
Maybe we should cut this bit about, it's not racism, but it is. In my defence, I grew up in a town that is half in Hertfordshire and half in Essex, and there was a very firm divide depending on which side of the town you lived in. So.
Well, I'm a Londoner, so I look down on everyone, so it's fine by me. If you weren't born in London, or perhaps I'll give you New York, Paris, or Berlin, maybe Rome, everywhere else.
Not Berlin.
Yeah, well, okay, fair enough.
I live in Germany.
Well, Berlin's pretty groovy, but apparently it's not really like living in Germany. Apparently it's like London, but in that it's not really like the rest of the country. Because, I don't particularly identify very strongly with Leicestershire or Humberside.
Does anyone identify with Humberside?
Well, only until they can escape, obviously. I'm not sure where we're going with this, but I suppose actually no, there is a link. There's a link to Humberside. Boom! Oh. Of course. Yeah, it's the return to the Premier League of our favourite cuddly manager, Steve Bruce.
Favourite whipping boys.
It's one of those things. Obviously, Steve Bruce as a player playing for Man United didn't like him, but as a manager, he mostly spends all his time saying lovely things about Arsenal and then taking our players on loan and playing them a lot.
He knows which side his bread's buttered, doesn't he? That's for sure, Brucey boy.
I mean, without him, perhaps Nicholas Bentner never would have launched his career.
It seemed clear that Chu Rakpong thinks he's coming back to Arsenal this summer.
Yeah.
Whether briefly.
Yes. He's also made that pretty clear in every interview he's given at any stage, at any point ever. His sights are very firmly set. And you never know. I mean, the fact is, he showed at Hull that he needs to improve in his game, but he also managed to be a regular choice for a team chasing promotion with a couple of international strikers they could pick ahead of him, one of whom they largely did because he scored a shit ton of goals. But yeah, I mean, he did okay for a first proper loan spell, I guess. And Isaac Hayden obviously didn't make the bench for the final, partly because most of Hull's best players are defensive central midfielders. Yes, that kind of means he was competing in their strongest squad position. But
there are also quite a lot of the next Spurs, though, aren't they? So
yeah.
Probably ought to get in ahead of those. Just on cemetery grounds, if nothing else.
And nothing wrong with David Myler. So anyway, I was quite pleased for Big Brucey, and they totally deserved to win. I think they pretty much dominated the game. And I also have to give a little shout out, even though a lot of people won't be very interested, to AFC Wimbledon getting promoted to League One, having barely been in existence for a decade. And I think most football fans can get behind the idea of if someone takes your club away, you build it again yourself. And now they're going to be playing against each other. So that's.
I did drive past FC United of Manchester actually when I was up at the Etihad.
Oh right.
A couple of weeks ago. It's literally like a couple of minutes away, just up the road. From Man City.
Any impressions? Small football ground.
Very small.
Yeah, well, comes with the territory.
Bear in mind, I've spent a lot of time at Barnet. Smaller than Barnet.
Yeah, and without the slope.
Yeah, and lots of Astro pitches around the side, in fairness, but.
Oh well, someone's investing some money.
Play on them.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we've done our best to manage to actually talk about stuff, despite the fact that basically not a lot has happened since we last convened. No,
it's bad when people are scratching around for quotes effectively from the Spanish press, aren't they? So there was a bit on Bellerin where they tried to make it sound like he was like, oh, I can't wait to leave. Barcelona's my home, and I'm always going to go back, and it's only going to be about 3 minutes away. Which, given he made his first start for the senior squad this week, possibly is a little bit closer than we'd like now. He's probably going to have the shirt thrusting and the DNA testing commencing with immediate effect.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one bit of I don't want to swear, sugar stirring from the Spanish press. And then the other bit, of course, was the quotes about Aaron Ramsey now saying, "Oh, we'd love to play in Spain one day."
Yeah, good luck, Aaron.
Well, if it means he starts playing better for us, then
yeah. I mean, if we get 2 or 3 years of Ramsey playing well enough for Arsenal to get a move to Barcelona, I'd take that.
Yeah, he's probably going to go Real Madrid, though, isn't he? I mean, clearly spending time with Gareth Bale's rubbing off far too much. So,
well, to be fair, neither of them are short of shit hot central midfielders.
Also true.
Yeah, I think Ramsey's desire to play in Spain. If you read the full quotes, it sounds it's a bit wistful, and I think that's all it is, really. I mean, obviously, any central midfielder worth their salt would like to be considered good enough to play for Real or Barca.
Yeah, but that's not what he said, is it? It's not like he said, "Oh, it would be great if they thought I was good enough to play for them."
No,
or, obviously it'd be really flattering if they came in for them. He was like, "I always thought one day I'd quite like to play in Spain." That's a bit different to me.
Yeah, and one day I'd quite like to get paid 20 million to do a movie.
Oh, the price of fame and fortune, though. Is it worth it?
You don't have to play the fame game. You can just bank the cheque and hide in your...
Once your face is out there.
Exactly. Well, if anyone wants to see my face, hey! I'm available for weddings, bar mitzvahs. Yeah, I think that... I mean, realistically, there's only going to be 3 teams in Spain that are going to be looking to buy players from Arsenal, and that would be Real, Barca and Atletico, and if he's good enough to get into either of their teams...
No one's going to go to Atletico. No, but they're not. Like, Atletico are the Arsenal of Spain, you know? They're one of the... This is an Arsenal podcast, I'm going to get shot. Like a pretender club, though. One of those ones who've won the league a few times, they've won some cups, they're a decent team, they challenge regularly, but they're just not quite in that. No, they're not. They're not a super club. Historical clubs.
They are a historical club, even though they've been historically less successful than Arsenal. But they're not, as you say, they're not a super club. They're not one of those European global kind of top 5 in the world clubs, which obviously Real and Barca are. But obviously, if they keep getting to Champions League finals every other year, then that might start to change.
Just ask Man City.
Well, touche. It
doesn't necessarily even take Champions League finals. It just takes a bucket load of cash.
Yeah. Well, having said that, we're now in a position where we can actually turn down a bucket load of cash. So again, if Ramsey's playing to the level where Barca and Real are prepared to spend the amount of money that it would take for them to extract him from the club, then...
Where do I start?
Well, yeah, not quite, but
no, but it is though. I like Ramsey, but I like Ramsey a lot. I think he's a good player. But do I think he's the kind of player that's irreplaceable if they offered us 80 million quid? No.
No, because you'd go out and buy Paul Pogba tomorrow.
Well, this is just it, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are players in our squad who I think we would struggle to replace like for like in terms of quality. The likes of Ozil. Yes, it would be a blow to lose someone like Ramsey, but do I think we couldn't find, as you said, central midfielders are 10 a penny in a way?
Well, yes, and as Wenger has commented before, and others have too, central midfielders and attacking midfielders are the most common breed at the moment. It's finding quality defenders and quality strikers is the tricky bit, which is...
Quality defenders.
Full circle for our transfer.
Some of those.
Well, we've got a couple.
Wow. Two. Yeah, I'll give you 2. Have a guess who you think my 2 are.
Koscielny and Bellerin.
Correct.
Nothing if not consistent, Helen. Good.
Speaking of which, did you see David Ospina in the Colombia game?
I didn't, no.
Another comedy performance. I don't even want to talk about him.
You brought him up.
He's not worthy of being on an Arsenal podcast, so let's just...
Well,
there's
there's talk of Szczesny going on loan to Roma for a second year, which I think probably suits all parties, really. Because Roma have bought
I'm a bit torn on that one. I'm torn. I think playing regularly is clearly working wonders for him, but the flip side of that is when we signed Czech, part of the high for me was the idea that Szczesny would be learning from Czech. Ingredients.
But there's historical precedence here, because what I'm thinking is going to happen, I'll tell you how I'm expecting this scenario to play out. So you got Szczesny with his 2 years in Rome, where he improves as a goalkeeper, gets slightly more technically sound, grows up a bit. He's married now, maybe he'll have a kid, just kind of be able to...
White suit. He got married in a white suit.
Yeah.
side.
Well, yeah. Well, this is why we're hoping he's going to grow up. But I'm seeing a scenario a little bit like when John Lukic signed for Arsenal from Leeds, where he was brought in to be the number 2 behind a very experienced, very highly thought of Pat Jennings, and then had a couple of years where they kind of shared much more game time, and he learnt a lot off the big Ulsterman. And I'm expecting that, if he has another year in Rome, then Szczesny will come back to Arsenal. That seems to be what he wants to happen. It seems to be what Arsenal want to happen. And
what contract has he got?
I think he's got another couple of years.
Well, otherwise we're just running his contract down. He's a valuable goalkeeper.
Yeah,
so we're going to do that. If we are going to let him go, we should bloody well get some money for him. Not that Roma can afford him. But.
Well, I mean, obviously we've all seen how these things pan out with Arsenal players before, but I know the plan seems to be to have him on loan for another year and then bring him back to compete with Cech in year 3 of the new goalie era.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I suppose when we signed him, I did say, in my mind, Czech's probably got 3 years in him, so that would tally up really.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a shame for Szczesny because it will mean he will be that much later in his career by the time he's first choice again. But
true, but I mean, I guess being first choice for the second best team in Italy isn't such a bad consolation prize.
No, it's true. At least he's playing, and fundamentally, I don't know how old he is now, but. 27,
26, 27, something like that, yeah.
Even if we're talking 2 years down the line, you'll get a good 6, 7, 8 years out of him if you really want.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's always good value for a follow on one of the social media networks, isn't he?
Oh, you'll have to enlighten me.
About the British call, but
right.
He's clearly got a little bit of Arsenal sewn into his heart as well. So.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, he's more British than half the British lads, but then that makes sense given that he's Polish.
Well,
that's my little input on the EU referendum.
You can make an argument, though, can't you? If you're a Polish chap who's been at the club since you were yay high and you speak with a Cockney accent, are you more likely to be loyal than someone like, say, Danny Welbeck, who clearly's got a Mancunian background?
Yeah.
So.
Although apparently Thierry was his favourite player growing up, so I reckon that's why we're keeping people like Thierry and Pires around the club. It's partly thinking about coaching, but it's partly just to go, hey, come and sign for us. You'll get to hang out with your heroes.
As we should be, frankly.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Someone's calling time on the podcast, I think. Yeah, I think on that note, we'll knock it on the head. Otherwise, we'll really start digressing into things which really aren't remotely current.
We've got to save something for the rest of the summer.
Yeah, but, well, I hope you found something interesting to listen to in amongst all that. And I quite enjoyed it. And thanks to Helen for coming and talking to me. So I'm slightly less of a sad Football Manager playing geek on my own.
Anytime, Matthew. If ever you wanted 2 people to manage to talk about basically nothing for an hour...
Got it covered. Oh, there we go. You've got the dog, I've got the sirens. It's time to go, kids.
Oh, well, it waited right till the end this time. So.
Yeah.